Awesome. Okay, so here's the first question. And you know what, Carrie, I'm gonna just kick it over right to you. Why did you choose to become a math teacher?
I didn't actually choose to become a math teacher.
It was forced.
I'll be honest. My teaching experience started with like an alternative certification. So I went to school for the sciences. So I was pre-med, and then had an opportunity to teach HIV education in India. And that kind of launched my teaching career of like, oh, I really want to do this. I enjoy this quite a bit. And so I was actually looking for a science position when I started looking for teaching, but all they had was a math position for me. And I was like, well, I like math. So I will go ahead and take that position with the possibility of it being like maybe a science position later on and things like that. So that's essentially how I became a math instructor for that.
I love it.
I
love it was a roundabout way.
It just happened to be the open position that they had for me at the time.
Sometimes things are just thrust upon us and we step into greatness, and I'm okay with that.
What about you? How did your math instructor journey begin?
So like I've always loved math, and my parents are always like, girl, where did you get that from? Jesus. So like it's always been something that I've loved and I cared about, but I knew I didn't want to be an accountant. If anybody's an accountant, listen to this, I'm sorry. And so I was like, what am I going to do with my math happiness? And I became a tutor. I did something called Freedom School the summer after my first year in college, and it was really about like low income family, something for in the summertime to be like supportive, but it was also an education component. And I was like, love this, but I only care about math. So I'm gonna be a math teacher. And I became a TA, and I was like, my sophomore year, and I was like, love this for middle school. But I was like, I'm gonna teach high school because I like competitive sports. I don't believe in that. Everybody's a winner stuff. So that's what happened to me. And I gladly embraced that ever since. But I always knew it was going to be something math. I just didn't know what the path was going to be with it. And I just knew I couldn't do something where I was just like sitting at a computer clicking every day. So yeah. Do we have anyone that wanted to share in the chat or share why they became a math instructor?
I'm looking into the chat right now, both on Facebook Live and in our Zoom here, and I don't see any stories coming in. But hopefully there'll be a few more. And so like as people are joining us on Facebook Live, feel free to answer any of the questions in the Facebook chat, and we'll be able to see it, as well as if you're joining us here via Zoom, feel free to use the Zoom chat and share your story of how you became a math instructor. We'd love to know what your journey to become a math teacher was. There's lots of different variations.
Clearly. All right. So here's what we got going for you all tonight. We'll just talk about like math mindsets, math identity, and how it impacts student learning. We'll also share some resources. I like for people to leave with like practical things that they can apply. And if there's any like specific questions, and then we'll wrap it up. So short and sweet, but intense at the same time. Our goal is that we really hope to really like challenge your mindsets towards mathematics, and whether that's to like reinforce that challenge or like challenge like the way that you look and approach certain things. I like to challenge people. The other one is like just have practical tools and resources to how to support that growth mindsets for student and math education. I think it's always nice to hear it, but then we're like, I need something to do it. And so we'll have some actual tools for you. So here we go. Let's do mindsets. One of the parts of my journey as a math educator, I was also an instructional coach. Then I coached at the state level, done some consultancy work. So I have been in the classroom, and I've also supported that instruction of the classroom, and things that I've really been intentional about with teachers, with myself, is like building math autobiographies with like at the beginning of a school year. I think one of the important things about doing that is really to gauge like where are people, or how are people showing up to their classrooms, and like what is their, like when you see math, are you like, oh, it, or are you like, oh no? So that way you can kind of know how to support and reinforce that. With that, one of the things like we asked earlier, like why did you become a math instructor? Part of my math autobiography is the fact that I had a math teacher in middle school, Mr. Powell. yes, that I absolutely loved. And I was blessed that he was able to like rotate with us. So I had him for my entire middle school experience. But he was a phenomenal math teacher because he like the way he taught math was just like with so much excitement and energy, and he exposed us to not just like how to solve a problem, but more of like, why does this work, how do you think this works? I'm really bringing in like also the fact that he taught, even though I went to a college prep school, the majority of the students were Black and Brown students, and so he was really intentional about bringing in people that looked like us. So it was like, you are a mathematician. It's not just for some people, it's for everyone. And being able to like really see that like, oh, I'm in there. That's me. They look like me, or they've done things that I've done, or I can do these things. Also making it really engaging has always been a part of like why I loved math even more, and why I really wanted to carry that into the journey when I finally decided to become a math teacher. Carrie, did you want to?
Sounds like he was really like kind of instilling that like passion for math just from like his own sort of passion and how he sort of talked about it. For you, maybe that's where you got your love of math from. It's just having him. But okay, so like you talked really about like this like math mindset and how his phrasing or his like passion that he brought to it really like made that change for you. Like, I'm curious if you remember this of like, how did like he essentially explain maybe some subjects that we know like as teachers our students shy away from, right? Like the moment we say something like, all right, we're going to be doing some fractions, like even as an adult, I know I feel a little like, oh, like for a moment, even though I'm like, that's not a real, like that's not actually like you know, I acknowledge that feeling and then I go about like, how do I reframe it like for myself personally, but like essentially thinking about your education with or with Mr. Powell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Love a good teacher shout out here.
Yes.
How did he explain something like a subject like fractions to you that would like really kind of do that, like impact your math mindset?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things he will always do is he should have been a comedian as well. He probably wasn't on the side, but he would always make the subject less scary and intense. So like you just said, you know, like instead of being like, we're about to get into fractions and like, oh, the dreaded F word, he'd be like, okay, who's ready for fractions? Who likes to eat? We got to divide that food. Are we going to share today? No. Okay. So we're talking like just bringing in the whole notion of like, it's a everyday real world type of thing and not making it scary. One of the things that we'll talk about a little bit later, but also like that is important is the notion of like how we speak or say things. Like we've all been in a meeting and it's been like, hello, welcome in. And you're like, oh boy, here we go. I got to do this PD. Well, when you come into a meeting, you're like, welcome, Carrie. It's good to see you. You know, you might be like, I really don't want to be here, but hey, how are you? So it's just like the way we say things, the way he would turn language around too, around like, you like if I would be like, oh, fractions are hard, or he would say like, okay, but you can do anything, or like we might not understand this concept yet, we got this. But the other thing that I love that he did the most was that he would explain like the origin of things. So like in algebra, he was like, algebra is actually Arabic, and in like the history behind it. So you're like, wait, what? So it's super cool to know the whys and the histories behind things, and knowing that like math is a like minority representation is all in and throughout math. And it really made us as students feel like we can handle it and we are going to be masters of it. Yes. A lot of talking.
I love that. I'm seeing lots of great analogies coming in of like that connection to math and making like, you know, math relatable to what it is that you're doing. And then also seeing like, you know, I think you said like the idea of like minorities are all throughout math, right? Like if you think about it, there's like so much representation that could happen through that. Well, my experience is a little different than yours, and it just still kind of go on that lines of like some of the stereotypical stuff that comes with math was a lot of my growing up experience with math. I'm gonna be honest, I'm Asian. People tend to have a view of Asians when it comes to math, and that was definitely part of my math story growing up and like the kids around me and things like that. So I sort of like fed into it and was like, okay, I guess I'm supposed to be good at math, right? But what I gravitated towards in math class was like the procedural stuff. I was like, well, this is really easy. Like I can follow directions and I can, but whether or not I knew what those directions were, like why
Right.
do it, I was like, I don't know. I just know it's a formula and I'm supposed to use that formula. And I did it and there's the answer and I'm right and I'm done. Right. And so that was kind of like my mathematical upbringing. But like I said before, like I didn't actually like want to be a math teacher. I wanted to be a science teacher. Like my background is in science and I loved sciences mostly because it was all about the discovery, right? Like you go in and you come up with like a hypothesis of I'm going to try this and I want to see if it works and I want to know why it works. And all of that was like my background. So like when I became a math teacher, that's actually what I brought to the classroom because I didn't connect with the procedural. Like the procedural is fine. Like I can give you the formula for circumference really easily. But like why and the discovery aspect of you give kids a bunch of circles and give them some string and have them discover that like, wait a second, if I take this like line across my circle and then try and like measure around, I almost always use 3 strings and like of that distance and need a little bit more. And then they're discovering the idea of pi, or like you take that half a circle, you cut it up and then you form a triangle and it's like, okay, triangles equal 180 degrees. Like all of these like theories that are based in math that are all like discovery based, and bringing that into my classroom was like really important to me because like that's what made math great for me, because it's basically like why I loved sciences so much. And so bringing that into the math classroom for my students was like one of my main things that I wanted. And where I sort of like learned and grew into was like the things that aren't necessarily always discovery based, right? Like some of the examples I named, you could do it with like different strategies, right?
Yeah.
Like you could essentially like set up your classroom to be more discussion based, and like having different examples from others and then them having to share their examples and learn from each other was like kind of how you could set up your classroom like discovery to like change math mindsets and be like, okay, it's totally fine to be wrong, like because it's like here's my justification on why I did what I did, and I learned that like in science, right, like that's not going to work, and here's what I learned and why I learned it, right? So
yes.
yeah.
How do you think that your focus on discovery really impact your students' learning in your classroom?
I think it lessened like any type of anxiety when it came to math, because like you got to reframe the idea of like mathematicians are people who just want to learn something or discover something. It's not like math, you had to be right. And that's kind of the mindset they had coming in, is like you're either right or wrong in math. And like being able to like flip that through like, no, a mathematician is like someone who wants to learn something and figure something out and want to problem solve, was really, I think, that kind of change that happened in my classroom by like incorporating some of these like discussion based practices and some of the discovery ones with like just different activities that you can do to like kind of increase that of like, it's not about being right and wrong. It's really about like, what are you learning from it?
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And so just one of the things that I've used this book a lot. It's also a phenomenal resource from NCTM. So any educators, math teachers, like I'm pretty sure you know about NCTM. But one of the beauties of this book, The Impact of Identity in K-8 Mathematics, is that it really dives into some of the components that like Carrie mentioned, some of the things that I'm now realizing like Mr. Powell was super intentional about, is one, like the importance of like student discovery and bringing in like student voice and showing students like you have the ability to do things. There's several different chapters within a book that just gives like practical examples of how to do that. And then the other piece that I think that would be honestly amazing and that I was doing and I learned from this book was like to bring in like the math autobiographies and really gauging to see like, one of the questions I was always ask my kids is like, how many of y'all actually like math? They'd be like, some, and then some like, absolutely not. And I was like, okay, at the end of the school year, I'm gonna ask you that again. I guarantee it's gonna change your mind. And I just think that knowing your students, knowing their anxiety levels and how they feel at the beginning of that year really helps and reinforces and supports us of how we can approach math, what language to use, how to reinforce, like, you got this, we can do this. And I think that it really, as you can see, as us educators, it can really impact like how you do things, but also how your students see themselves and do things as well. Okay, so while we keep it moving and grooving, I would like for people like throw in the chat or even off on Facebook as well, like what are some of the ways that you encourage or challenge like your students' mindsets toward mathematics? I think we all know like we've been in a place where people, if we say like, I'm a math teacher, and you'll say, I'm not good at math. I try to fix my face when they say that. But like, what are some of the ways that you combat those things? And while people are putting it in the chat or like processing and thinking, I want to take us to like how that really impacts like math identity and like how it impacts student learning. And Carrie, at any time if somebody pops something in, definitely let me know because I would love to hear it. Let's go to like identity and impact on learning, because I know for a fact that all of us, any math teacher has heard or seen or been a part of somebody saying one of these phrases. I I would always say like, I'm bad at math, and I'm like, can you count? You got this. Like, do you know how to spend money? You also got this. Yay. But one of the things that I think has a major impact on learning is the one that says like, I can't do this. And I believe in like the power of yet. It's like, I can't do this yet. I mean, like, hello, we're in school to learn. So I didn't expect you to come into Algebra 2 ready to do all of these like formulas and problems and different things. Like, this is what we're here to do. And so a lot of times I would do simple things like combat my students' language with like, yet. And so it got to the point where they would be like, yet, okay, yet, like they knew it was coming. And the one that I always like, I'm not a math person. And we actually heard this from our teacher advisory board earlier. So like I can hit on it and be like, there's evidence, it's still happening. I'm not gonna use this ever. Excuse me. Yes, you are. So one of the things that I would always say to combat that is like, why we gotta do this? I'm not gonna use this. Well, no, you're not gonna be at the grocery store balancing an equation. Absolutely not. You are gonna be using problem solving skills. And so I would talk to my kids about this all the time. So after school, I know you're about to go to the store with your $5 and buy yourself candy and hot chips and all the snacks that you probably shouldn't be eating. You have to use problem solving skills to determine what can you afford, how much are you going to get, and are you going to have enough money to come back the next few days because you know you want to snack all week. And so just reinforcing like it's about problem solving. It's about, like Carrie said, multiple strategies and thinking through how to do different things. That really is like, this is the importance of like why we're doing math and why we're teaching math. Because at the end of the day, there's only one way to conjugate a verb. And when you're trying to make a compound or chemical bond, you can only make certain compounds. But in math, there's so many different ways that you can approach one problem, and being able to expose your students to that through discovery, as well as challenge them and give them opportunities to try those different things. That really builds their one confidence, but arsenal and tool for problem solving.
Yeah, I think that language piece is like so important. I mean, seeing from the chat, the teachers always telling their students that like we all learn differently and we just need to meet a better understanding. So she always asks them to keep an open mind and to learn something new every day. And so like that kind of same idea of like that problem solving or that learning mindset that like happens to help develop that like math identity, and see it as like so important.
I absolutely love that. That's a beautiful way to like, one, again, like shift the mindset, but also like take some like ownership on the student side, like be willing to try something new. I'm working on change. so sometimes I have to be encouraged to like try new things as well. Thanks for sharing that. Okay. I wanted to like wrap around another practical resource. So another tool, another book, again, NCTM has like a lot of phenomenal books that they suggest and support. But another one is Principles to Action. And I love this book because it helped me as a teacher, as well as like an instructional leader, really think about like the mindset component. And so some of the things that really push and challenge that I learned in this process was like, what type of language are you using in and doing your instruction? And then how do you also reinforce positive growth mindset? So we gave the example earlier about fractions. And so again, it's like, it's simple to be like, oh yeah, we're doing fractions. Like, oh, I know it's going to be hard. Like, okay, like if I were hearing that, I'm like, well, dang, it's about to be hard. Like we're about to struggle together, as opposed to like, all right, y'all, we get into fractions. We got this. You can do this. Like you're saying the same thing and you're letting your students know that you're about to learn something new that might be challenging, but the literal tone and how you present things can shift the entire mood in a mindset again, or like how students see themselves in the work. There's a phenomenal chart, and this is in the book, and so I just pulled it and posted it here, where it just talks about like unproductive beliefs versus productive beliefs, and I really feel like it brings out like that positive or like that growth mindset versus like a fixed mindset. I think one of the ones that that really like pull me in the most is like students can learn math through exploring and solving contextual math problems. I think like you mentioned it, Carrie, where it's like, even if it is something that's like, okay, like here is a formula, this is the formula. Yeah, you can still have conversations around like strategies and how to break that apart, and like moving away from just procedural things to for students to be able to understand like how and the whys behind things that also matter and are important. Did you want to add anything, Carrie, before we go?
No, I love that. I like the how and the why. I think you sort of hit upon a lot of these different phrases for how you can develop like growth mindset through your language choices, like what, like kids saying, when am I ever going to use this? Kind of giving them that reason behind, well, maybe not this particular thing, but the idea and the skill behind problem solving, you will. And then the power of yet. I love the power yet. I think it's so important. Like teachers like are already doing this for sure. Like there's just no doubt, like this is something like you and I have had lots of PD on. I'm sure teachers have as well. So it's nothing new, but I think hopefully teachers from this PD are being like, oh yeah, that's like a nice reminder. It's the end of the year. It's like past April. Like this is hard to do for sure. And so hopefully this PD is like a nice reminder for that. Speaking of which, like I do want one like thing of like, how would you reframe it for students if like they come up with the whole thing of like, you know, this is hard, like that kind of idea, and that's the phrase they give you.
Yes,
like, how would you rephrase that one?
That's a great one. A lot of times I would say like, this is hard, but we're here to learn, and you're gonna master this. Or I would say things like, I totally agree, but we came to school to learn today, so let's learn something new. I think I also like your example that the teacher said earlier around asking them like, let's just be willing to try something new today. So I think like that's an awesome way to like combat that, because one thing I wouldn't say is like, no, it's not, it's easy, you could do it, because some of the stuff is super hard, okay? Because there's times where I'm like, man, what am I supposed to? I was looking at some Calc 3 stuff and I was like, oh, let me just revisit this again. But just being able to instead of like sitting in like, yeah, it's hard, oh well, it's like, but we're here to learn. I think you got this. We came to school to learn. We're confident. And again, pulling in that yet. You haven't mastered this yet, or like you came to school to learn, and this is what we're going to do today. Things like that.
Yeah, definitely. Love it. All
right. So definitely want to leave you all with some resources. So we noted a couple of the books that we have there. But also some of the like phenomenal things to use are like the 8 standards for mathematical practice, which I'm sure you all know what that is, but just like infusing that in. There's a couple of resources that I want to show specifically in our, like with the time that we have. And we have a resource where a teacher created like a practical way to implement like the 8 standards for mathematical practice. So I wanted to be able to share that with you here. And then also it's super crazy that we have Carrie Moy here, because she actually had a tool that she used and created And we actually use it as a resource before we snatched her up to be a part of this organization. So who better to talk about that or to share more about it than her? So I will open it up. Is it the first one or the second one, Carrie?
I think it's the third one, the second one. So that one. But yeah, essentially what it is it's a rubric that you can use with your students. We did Google Classroom, and so really around that idea of growth mindset, especially with assessments. I didn't want students to be worried about the score itself, which is great because now in assessments you can actually choose to assign where it's just the symbols of success for students. So they're not actually seeing like the number score. They're not going to see like a 67%. They're just going to see that lovely orange check box. A check with a circle around it as like their symbol of success. But essentially the rubric is really around growth mindset of like, I wanted my students to have as many green checks and as many orange checks as possible in their assignment. And if they did it on time and it was majority like orange, that was great in my opinion. And that they used the feedback that they got to help push their learning forward. If I saw a lot of red X's, that just meant red check marks in the new symbols of success. If I saw a lot of red check marks, then I would be like, all right, like, did you look at show answer? Like, what was going on? How many times did you try before show answer to kind of evaluate like where their growth mindset was? And like, if a student just had those red checks, we'd have that conversation. And then we try and push for like, let's get orange, like orange is where we're going for. And so that idea. So I graded based on like the amount of orange and green they had and kind of really pushed that growth mindset. And so that rubric is kind of how I used that to support that math mindset. But
I think that's awesome. And I appreciate the fact that you're here to be able to share that. One of the things I am super excited about is the fact that we did shift our scoring, like that it's not just numbers now, that we do have the symbols of success, because I do feel like that does reinforce and support that mindset or the growth mindset. We had like teachers that would share that out as well and taking like numbers away, because it's really about like the practice and not about like you got it wrong on the first try. No, it's about perseverance through problem solving and practicing and mastering of things.
yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, sorry. Okay.
Oh, no, I was just going to say some things came into the chat too. Not questions, but if there are any questions, I will go ahead and pull those out too. But something of like this teacher was saying, she just always includes herself. It's like a we when it comes to like working with students. Using we frequently, and we and our frequently to tell the students that we're in this learning together.
Love it. I absolutely love that. Yes, yes. Building that community, and that's really important. Any other things coming through or any questions or anything?
Not that I'm seeing in the Facebook Live or in the chat, but I will definitely highlight that as they come in.
Okay, awesome. I love that. Okay, so just wanted to hear like something that might have resonated with you or challenged you based off of our conversations that we had today. And just noting like, we know this isn't new information. It's just more of like that reinforcing and supporting of what you're currently doing, just trying to like bring it all back home. So if there's anything that really like resonated with you today of like, oh yeah, I'm gonna try that, or like, oh, I like that book, maybe I should learn more, or even challenged you or pushed you, would love to hear, or would love for you to share that either in the chat or feel free to come off mute as well. Anything for you, Carrie, that you think about like, one thing I would do differently is this.
I really like just the we conversation. It's just like using that. I've always been a big fan of the power of yet, but I think resonate with me. It's like even now, like just thinking about like we as the phrase and trying to like really think of like when things are hard, it's like we're in this together type of situation.
Yeah.
What about for you?
I would agree with that. I totally agree with that. I think it's like, instead of saying like, you got this, like, we totally got this, we're gonna rock this. So I think that also brings in like, again, the community component, but then also makes the student feel like I'm not in this on my own. So I love that. The power of we. All right. As if anything comes in, totally fine. Do want to honor y'all's time. We did start a few minutes late, so I'm hold your hostage just for a few more minutes. Definitely just want to wrap up today we just spent some time talking about mindsets and really like how to impact student identity, like growth mindsets, positive framing. I love that we language and really showing like asking students like, you want to try something new today? Because I'm here for that. And I think it will help adjust with change. As always, we definitely appreciate your feedback. So I will have Carrie put the survey in the chat on both sides. And so I'll give her a moment to pull that up. But while she's doing that, I just want to share a few different things that we have going on as you fill out the survey. We do have Assistance Advantage. So if it's something that you are really looking for, as far as like, I know you have like deep data like practices or things that you're doing in your classroom, but you want to see that at the school and maybe your district level, we have Assistments Advantage, and that's something that we're really here to help reinforce and support that work with y'all, doing some additional coaching and supporting. If you want to learn more information, feel free to reach out and contact us. And actually, the webinar that we have coming up next month is connected to that. We also have a Facebook group, so definitely click on or like scan this code and join. We put out a lot of like information around just like random topics. We put blog posts, just new information that we have coming up, anything where it's like, hey, join this group, or we have different like initiatives and things that we worked on, talked to. So you get a lot of information if you join our Facebook group. So we'd love to have you. And again, next month, we'll be talking about harnessing the power of learning data at the school and district levels. And so while this is more directed or towards like instructional leaders and decision makers, all are definitely welcome. But we really want to set the stage of like how Advantage can really support and reinforce what you're doing in your schools and accelerate that beyond just your classroom to like the entire school and district as well. So we hope that you sign up. Really appreciate you all coming tonight, Carrie. Love the fact that you were open and vulnerable and just being like, hey, this is what my math thing was like. Learn some new things about you tonight, and I'm happy about that. So thank you all so much for joining us. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to contact@assistments.org. And please don't forget to take that survey. Thank you so much, and hope y'all have a good night. Carrie, did you have anything else before we close out?
No, thank you for letting me share my story tonight. I'm excited. I got a lot out of it, like hearing about your story and math mindset, and I hope other teachers did as well. And thank you to everyone who joined us on Facebook Live, as well as our Zoom session today.
Yes, thank you so much, everybody. Have a great night.